An inaccurate sales forecast can have many downstream detrimental effects across an organization, where revenue opportunities can be missed if resources and budgets are improperly allocated. According to RB Interactive, errors in forecast information can cause up to a 63% loss of potential revenue or a revenue shortfall. Today, we're going to see how an intelligent ERP can enable salespeople to forecast with greater accuracy and to focus on areas that have the most impact on an organization's performance. In our demonstration today, we're going to look from the perspective of David, head of sales at Velotix, a bicycle manufacturing company. Like most sales organizations, David has a sales plan with monthly target revenue goals for each product that Velotix produces. David and team are always under pressure to make their monthly product revenue goals, and David also must provide a forecast for future periods to production planning to ensure that what his team sells is produced on time. David feels he's always in a no-win situation. If he forecasts that his team will be short of plan, and then they figure out a way to make their number, his initial forecast could cause stockouts and back orders. Prior to using SAP, many SAP customers reported a revenue loss between 10 to 15% due to stockouts. If David forecasts that his team will exceed plan, but his team ends up just making their number, his early forecast could cause production planning to produce goods that don't get sold. Either way, David loses. According to RB Interactive, bad forecasts can cause companies to buy and retain as much as 57% more inventory than they need. David also must share his sales forecast with finance. If David shares an optimistic forecast, finance will raise guidance externally with investors, and David's team will be under pressure to outperform. If David shares a pessimistic forecast, finance will take away his headcount for new salespeople, and David's team will be under pressure to cover all customers. Either way, David loses. So let's see how a digital transformation of sales will impact David and team. Here I'm logged in as David, sales manager of Velotix, and to see how David and team are tracking to their sales plan, David can launch the Sales Performance Prediction app. Now within this app, David has set up his own view called Predicted Bike Sales that filters according to his currency, his sales plan, the current periods that he's worried about, as well as the different products that his team is responsible for selling. In the graphical display in the bottom half of the screen, David can see 3 different columns for each product and each month. The first column shows the real-time sales volume totals. The last column shows the planned sales volume, basically his team's target quota for that product. Instead of having to run multiple reports to triangulate the performance of his team, in a single place, David can see real-time performance by product, by month, and where they are according to plan. The middle column is a predicted value that is generated by predictive analytics in the intelligent ERP. Using historical sales orders, S4HANA has used predictive analytics to generate a forecast of sales volume that can be compared against actual and planned volumes. A prediction is great, but David could do this in the past with spreadsheets, using simple linear regression where a slope of a line predicts the next result. The convenience of having this prediction embedded in the intelligent ERP is great, but David needs to understand why this forecast is better than the forecasts he would have created manually. So let's take a closer look at the predictive model to see how it is more accurate. So here I've switched tabs, and David's going to open this tile called Predictive Models. Here we can see all of the predictive scenarios built into the intelligent ERP. Today in this demonstration, we're going to look at 2. We're going to look at the sales quotation conversion rate and the sales volume. So first, let's just look at the details of the sales volume predictive model. First, the modeling context, so you can have different contexts, but here the context is just the default. And then next, we can see the sales volume model itself. We can see that it's active. We can just see a description, when it was created. And if David, for some reason, wants to retrain the model, maybe there's newer results that the model should take into account, David could click the train button to create a new version of this model. If we then continue to dive in, we can see the different versions that exist of this predictive model. And we can see that if we needed to activate or deactivate a version, perhaps the new version is not as accurate as we hoped, we could do that by simply changing which model is active. Now David can see the details of the predicted model version. We can see its quality score, its predictive power, as well as its predictive confidence. We can even see the key influencers for this model. David can see that the forecast is finding a function to predict sales volumes using these key influencers. In the performance chart, David can see the model is measuring its own validity. David can see that this predictive model is using data science and is much more accurate than his linear regression spreadsheet methods. David's relieved that he can begin relying on the intelligent ERP for a more accurate forecast, and so he returns back to the sales performance prediction app. Previously, David had created his forecast by having his team look at open quotes, past sales volumes, and then using their own judgment on the likelihood of those quotes converting to generate a forecast for a future period. David had then used a spreadsheet to override and roll up reps' forecasts, trying to remove the human factor that leads to inaccuracy. This single-threaded approach took a lot of time away from selling, and still was not accurate enough to satisfy the needs of production planning and finance. According to Serious Decisions, reps spend on average 2.5 hours per week, and managers 1.5 hours on forecasting. Yet nearly 80% of sales organizations don't forecast within 10% of where they eventually land. With this new sales performance predictions app, David can easily see where his team's performance is against plan today, and using the machine learning generated prediction, he can also see where his team will land. David and team do not have to spend hours per week messing with spreadsheets, arguing about who has the best intuition, and in order to try to predict the future. Instead, they can spend more time selling. David wants to immediately resolve two of his top concerns: providing a forecast to finance and providing a forecast to production. So first, David slides over to future months, and so here we can see the prediction as well as the plan. And in some cases, there's a significant gap based on the sales plan and the prediction. So David starts a co-pilot chat to enlist finance. So David first takes a screenshot and points to areas where there's a significant gap between the predicted value and the planned value. David then types a note and then invites someone from finance to this conversation. And according to Ernst & Young's Global Generation Survey, when employees have a low trust of their employer, more than 40% will begin to look for another job, and 25% will make less of an effort to do quality work. When sales plans and comp plans are not in line with reality, these are the type of trust issues that can unmotivate and disengage employees. David could also look at this data from a table view and even export it to a spreadsheet so that it can be used as part of planning information for production. So production could look at these predicted values, and of course they already have the planned values, to determine what they actually want to produce to support David and team's sales efforts. Production planning can look at the predictive model as well to see that the confidence level of this prediction is much higher than the traditional linear regression models that folks use to forecast demand. David is beginning to like this digital transformation. He's able to challenge finance to adjust his team's compensation plan, and he's able to easily provide production planning an objective forecast that he cannot be blamed for. So much has been accomplished, David considers spending the rest of the day at the golf course, but he is too excited to use this app with his team on their weekly forecast call. For once, David is excited to start his weekly forecast call with his team. David explains the predicted sales volume and focuses the call on actions to close the gaps between the actual and the predicted number. David remembers that one of his sales reps for Bike Pros has been promising a big upturn in business this quarter. David can easily filter this information by Bike Pros, and David can see that mountain bikes are off plan and even under what the prediction should be. On the call, David asks the sales rep for Bike Pros to meet with this customer, find out if competitors are running promotions or if other external factors are influencing performance. According to CSO Insights' 2017 World Class Sales Practices Study, the win rate of forecasted deals is 46.9%, or less than half. While on the call, David even drills in further to Bike Pros and looks at the quota conversion rates. David sees a list of open sales quotations for mountain bikes for Bike Pros, and David points out how the intelligent ERP is telling his sales rep how they can close the gap with Bike Pros. S4HANA is indicating what percentage of these open quotes are likely to be converted to orders and the ultimate value. David asks his sales rep to immediately reach out to Bike Pros about these expiring quotations. David continues the meeting by having similar conversations with other sales reps when the Bike Pros sales rep interrupts and shares the good news that Bike Pros wants to convert the quotations into an order. The sales rep says he'll do it after the meeting. Instead, David opens Copilot and asks Copilot to show the open quotations for Bike Pros.